Well, the SEC's long run is over. Jim Harbaugh and Michigan national champs. Joel Klatt, voice of college football for Fox Sports. He's got the Joel Klatt Show, college football podcast, wherever you get your podcast. So we had said we thought Washington-Texas matched that well. Washington-Michigan was a different ball game.
Yeah.
The game kind of looked like a lot of people thought it would look.
I mean, it did in a lot of ways. I thought I give Washington a lot of credit for actually making it the game that it was in the middle part of the game because it looked like Michigan was going to run them out of the building, to be honest with you, and literally and figuratively there early. Michigan does such a good job, and I know this is in the weeds, but when you talk about stopping the run, you've got to have what's called gap control, a player for every single gap in the offensive front. And what Michigan does better than anybody else in the country is if there is one guy outside of his gap, they exploit it. Bam. And that's what you saw in those big runs early in the game. Yeah. And then ultimately, this is the stat that just jumps off the page to me. And this is why I think Jesse Minter is going to have an incredible future. Washington, with Michael Penix, Odunze, Polk, and McMillan, all healthy, all ready to go. 13 possessions, 13 points. Masterful job on the defensive side. And obviously that started with those defensive tackles and their ability to win the line of scrimmage. Yeah.
10 wins first year, national championship final year. What's his legacy from what he took over to what he finished?
I don't see how he's anything short of a Schembechler-esque legacy. Like I fail to see why his legacy wouldn't be up there with the greats in the history of Michigan
Johnson,
football.
Pete Carroll, Harbaugh.
Oh, well, I'm just talking about Michigan, but at the college level, I've said this for a long time. Jim Harbaugh is one of the very rare coaches that have had success at both levels. Yeah. It doesn't happen all the time. Yeah. And now he's proven that he can be the best coach in college football. He's proven that he was within a snap of the Super Bowl. I mean, Jim Harbaugh right now is a top 3 to 4 football coach any level on the planet.
Yeah. And all these agendas and all these haters, it's been a bad year for the Lamar Jackson, Jim Harbaugh critics.
Yeah.
I said this before, but his family's very close.
Yeah.
The Chargers is the best job available. But Washington's interesting. The parents can move. Baltimore, Washington, see their grandkids. Mm-hmm. He doesn't have to face his brother. He's uncomfortable with that. He can go to Washington. That division's got Jalen Hurts, Dak, Daniel Jones. He gets the number 2 pick. Washington has the most cap space. Chargers, I think we both agree with Herbert. It's a really good job.
Sure. Short term, that would be the obvious place to go.
Washington's not terrible.
I don't disagree with that. I think those are the 2 locations that he will look at the most. And of course, he's got an extension on the table that will make him one of the highest, if not the highest paid college football coach in the sport. Now, what he's going to have to weigh is does he want to deal with the ridiculous and inept NCAA, or does he want to go and try to prove that he can actually complete the mission at the next level and win the Super Bowl and be one of these guys like Pete Carroll and Jimmy Johnson that can win it at both levels? I think it's an interesting question. He loves Michigan. He is Michigan in so many ways, and it's such a fascinating year because I've called. Well, let me back up for a moment. I've called 16 of their games since 2021. Michigan games, 16 of them. Wow. And so I've been around him a lot, probably more than any other analyst in the sport. And I can tell you that this transformation over the last 3 years, he is a much more jovial, happy, and communicative coach than he ever was before. He genuinely loves his players. He genuinely loves Michigan. And he genuinely did not understand what in the world was going on with this investigation. I met with him constantly, and he would be like, I don't get it. They've searched my phone. They've searched my laptop. What more do you want? I'm telling you the truth, is the way that he went through this. And so I think his level of, or I should say his desire to stick around and deal with the bureaucracy of the NCAA is next to nothing. Let me put it to you this way. He got a notice, the program got a notice of allegation, what was it, 2 weeks ago, last week, about that stemming from the quote-unquote recruiting violations. A kid showed up at their building during a COVID dead period, and they fed him. And then apparently there were some analysts that were on the field when apparently they shouldn't have been on the field during a practice. And then the NCAA is claiming that he was not forthright with information and so on and so forth. And so there's a notice of allegations. That's illegal. Meanwhile, there's still rules about inducements on the books with the NCAA. You cannot pay a player to come directly to your school. And this signing period, I saw players roll up to their signing day. They haven't signed. Not supposed to have $1.
In Bentleys.
In Lamborghinis and Bentleys. And Jim's sitting here thinking to himself, you're giving us notice of allegations because a kid showed up during a COVID dead period? Like, in his mind, he doesn't understand this. And why would you deal with this? Why would you deal with the potential 6, 7, 8 game suspension from an organization that you don't trust, nor do you don't respect?
Yeah. He's also, his strength as a coach is this relentless, repetitive building of structure. Mm-hmm. The NFL creates structure. It's a very structured league. College football makes $7 billion a year, and they don't have a president, a CEO, a schedule maker. So I think Pete Carroll struggled with this. At the end, he was like, I love the kids, and I love so much about the sport. But this inability to solve issues that are clearly solvable, that the NFL solves. There's a free agent period. There's a cap. There's you win.
The draft.
Yeah, like everything in the NFL is built on structure. Nothing in college football is built on structure. And I think Jim deserves better.
Well, I mean, you can put it that way. I think that he might desire a little bit better. And let's face it, he came back to the college level for one reason: to restore what he feels like is order or excellence at his favorite place. His alma mater, at Michigan. He's done that. There is nothing left to prove at Michigan. If he wants to stay there and deal with the NCAA and coach kids, then he's going to. And I guarantee you that he's going to love doing it. And if he wants to challenge himself at the next level, I believe that he'll have his pick of jobs, which, as you've put it, and I would 100% agree, would be the Chargers or Washington.
Yeah. So Penix didn't play well, but he's a statuesque, beautiful thrower. A Goff, a Matt Ryan, a Tua. And when those guys are hurried and face pressure, they're not very good.
Yeah, I mean, Brady wasn't good in that situation.
Yeah, so I don't think less of him. That's what he is. Tua was his comp, and Tua under pressure is not great. I don't really get JJ McCarthy as a high-level pro. Feels a little small and slight to me, build-wise. I think he benefits greatly from the coach, the O-line, the run game.
The structure.
Penix kind of has to carry Washington. McCarthy sort of manages Michigan.
Let's put it a different way. Everything that you said is correct. Michael Penix is asked by his coaching staff and his structure and philosophy of offense at Washington to make anywhere between 20 to 35 on the high end. Last night it was 35 NFL-style throws. Okay? Drop back, make the read, post-snap, and throw with timing, anticipation, and accuracy.
They ask a lot.
They ask a lot of him, and he's excelled. Now, that's hard to do, and you see the product of a defense that's going to confuse you and put pressure on you, and that's what happened a night ago. On the flip side, JJ McCarthy, very talented player. Really like JJ McCarthy. Athletic, good arm, excellent player. He's asked to make about 5
I was going to say
NFL
4.
throws.
That's it. He
Maybe
made one to the tight end.
And the throw to the tight end was excellent. By the way, it was still off of play action. Now, he's got great ability, but what they were asked to do with their respective programs was vastly different. Yeah. One is, I think, very translatable to the National Football League. That would be Michael Penix. The other one is not so translatable. It's harder to say, well, I know exactly what J.J. McCarthy is as a prospect, because he's just not asked to do that.
It reminds me a little bit when Colt McCoy was at Texas.
Yeah.
And he obviously could move. Colt was a little small. But he wasn't asked to do, because that was during the Mac Brown. They had a lot of talent. They were winning those recruiting wars. And it was like, I like Colt, but I don't know how good he is based on, they're not asking him to do much. I love Matt Leinart. They weren't asking him to do a ton.
Yeah.
Penix is asked by a program that dominates 3-star recruits, carry us to the promised land.
Well, and I think to some degree, this is playing out in front of our eyes this year with C.J. Stroud. The way that what he was asked to do at Ohio State is exactly what he's doing now with the Texans. It is completely translatable.
Yeah.
And it's working. Now, obviously, they've got a good defense and some good structure there, and he's got more talent around him than let's say, a Bryce Young. But I think that I'm higher on Penix than most. I would take him too. I would take him in the top 5 or 6 picks. Yeah. I think that the injury history is going to be a concern. McCarthy is a harder evaluation for me because of what we're talking about. I don't know how translatable his game is. Now, he's very unselfish. He would be great in the locker room. I do think he has the ability. I just haven't seen it on a consistent basis, which is why I've made the assertion, if I was advising JJ McCarthy, I would tell him to go back to school.
If Jim leaves, who gets the Michigan job?
You know, I think there's a coach on their staff that is 1-0 against Ohio State, and that's Sharon Moore.
Yeah.
I honestly think it's as simple as that.
Because Harbaugh is going to take his DC.
I would imagine. So Jesse Minter is the defensive coordinator.
People love him.
And Jesse he's got NFL DNA.
Yes.
Remember, I told you the story last week about Mike McDonald and Jesse Minter.
Yeah.
And Jesse's going to want to go back to the NFL at some point. This would be seamless and easy entrance into the NFL as a coordinator if he were to just follow Jim, if Jim decides to go to the Chargers or Commanders. I do believe that Sharon Moore makes a lot of sense for Michigan because they've built something very special, right?
And he gets it.
And he gets it, and he's a part of that. And so you can have a continuation of what you know is working at the top end. And in a lot of ways, it would feel a little bit like a Lincoln Riley or a Ryan Day at Oklahoma or Ohio State, and you're trying to continue excellence, which is very difficult to do.
Yeah.
I actually think it's easier to continue excellence for someone that's been within the program than outside and trying to bring in something totally different. And
because everything Michigan's doing is right. So a new guy comes in and has his way of seeing it, and all you're doing is unraveling stuff that's working.
How in the world would someone from the outside walk in front of those players? Will Johnson still has to be there next year. Mason Graham still has to be there next year. Colston Loveland's has to be there.
If JJ McCarthy
and if someone walks into the room and is like, all right, we're going to change some things up, they're going to be like, beat it.
Yeah.
You know, so for those reasons, I think Sharon makes a lot of sense.
Okay, crazy town Buckeye fan probably sitting there today going, Mike Vrabel to the Buckeyes. Ryan Day's safe, right?
I would, yes.
I mean, any reasonable person would.
Of course.
He couldn't beat Harbaugh at the end. Yeah. Pete Carroll was struggling with a Seahawk.
Guess what? You know, there's only been like 3 times in history that a Saban assistant has actually beaten Nick Saban. Maybe it's more than that, but you get, the percentages are so low. He's struggling with Harbaugh right now. He's struggling with Michigan right now. Speaking of Ryan Day. You know how quickly it can turn around. And this is, by the way, an overarching point that I would love to make today is, and this I think will be in the vein of what you're asking, okay? Last night was the most hopeful and inspirational national championship game that college football has had in 15 years.
Yeah.
And the reason is because it no longer has to look one way. It doesn't have to be that you've had a top 3 or 4 recruiting class for 4 straight years, and you've got a top 3 composite roster littered with 10 or more 5-star athletes. For 15 years, that's what it had to be. You could not win a national championship unless you were LSU with Burrow, Bama or Clemson or Georgia.
Yeah.
It just, it wasn't possible. Okay, Ohio State did it with a roster that was incredibly talented in 2014.
They've always had an SEC-level roster there.
And last night, we saw 2 developmental rosters filled with veteran players, really good coaches, and the team that won, their average recruiting class in the last 4 years was outside of the top 10. Their composite roster from a talent perspective is ranked 14th in the country this year, and they had exactly 2 5-star players. It no longer has to be what it used to be in college football. There are now 15 to 20 programs that I believe wake up today and can legitimately say, we can do that. We can do that. We can be fundamentally sound and tackle in space well and win at the line of scrimmage and develop a great culture to go and win a national championship. And we're going to have access because it's going to be a 12-team playoff and not this 4-team invitational that's been an eye test. So let's bring it back to Ryan Day. Ryan Day is sitting there watching his rival play for and win the national championship Meanwhile, he just got a commitment from, I think, the best SEC running back last year, which was Quinshon Judkins from Ole Miss. He's going to Ohio State next year.
Great. He's a great player.
Ohio State can get right back into the fold
they'll be fine.
with Ohio State, with Ryan Day.
They're already in the playoff. Like, Ohio State's always going to be fine.
I don't get the Vrabel thing. Call me crazy.
He's an NFL guy.
He is. And it's like, you're telling me Mike Vrabel wants to go deal with the mess that is college football and recruiting and transfer portal and NIL? Beat it. Come on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I said this. Jay Wright had 10 years to coach. Villanova, I'm out. Krzyzewski was already leaving. I'm out. Roy Williams. 3 of the best coaches in college basketball. One, Jay Wright, had 10 years. They looked at this portal, which is worse in college basketball than football, and said, we're out.
You can have it.
You can have it. And so I think guys like Harbaugh, listen, man, very rarely does timing work out perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
You win the Natty, the portal's a bit of a mess, the conference is expanding and getting tougher, and Justin Herbert's available. That doesn't happen. I mean, if you think of the NFL great jobs available, Matt LaFleur, Green Bay got one, but Green Bay doesn't have an owner, and they don't get free agents. So you had Aaron, late middle of prime, pretty darn good job. Mike McCarthy got Dak, Cowboy job, pretty good job. I would argue Herbert this moment is as good as Aaron was late. I mean, I think Herbert's a 6'5", 240. You just don't get a star quarterback and a good roster. Those jobs don't open up. Under contract, it's usually Carolina, Atlanta.
No, you're
That's
right.
why Washington's interesting, because Harbaugh can be like, listen, most salary caps, I can go buy players. And oh, by the way, I'll be good in the draft because I just recruited most of them. And I recruited Drake May. So, I mean, Harbaugh recruited all these college quarterbacks.
Yeah. Drake May is an interesting one.
He's really
he's
little
really
inconsistent.
Good. He's under the radar because of the flash of Caleb Williams and the greatness late here of Penix and the Heisman of Jaden Daniels. But sneaky, the guy that in 10 years we could look up and be like, oh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, is Drake May.
Yeah.
He does a lot of things well.
Yeah. He looks good.
I mean, listen, the commander's job is interesting. Selfishly, I would love Jim to stay at Michigan. He's great for college football.
Yeah, we have Fox. We have some Big Ten games on next year.
And not only that, but again, think of that point that I was making about the hope that last night gave to the whole sport.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, last night opened up the sport as open as it's been in 15 years, and I think that's a great thing.
Listen, I look at college football like I do my family.
I can't wait for this.
No, I same thing. I love it. Now, I get my family. We're not for everybody. College football is not for everybody. It's a bit of a barnyard musical. But I look at college football like it's got so many flaws that drive me crazy.
Oh, man.
And my wife and I sometimes, let's pour an 11 a.m. some sauce here. It's a little wild at the family ranch. I love, despite all the silliness and flaws and goofiness and the frustrations with college football, NFL's got so much more predictability and structure. It's grown-ups. I love the sport, and I thought last night was such a wonderful moment.
I do think that the real growth potential of any sport in our country lies with college football.
Oh, no. If it's a $12 stock, buy it.
100%. And the reason is because there is so much value left on the table. We just had guys.
And let me tell you something.
I know this is going to sound like a knock. It's not. It's not a knock. Preface. We just had to have a national championship game on cable on a Monday night. Like, just rethinking the way that we do the biggest events in our sport, there's 10%, 15%, 20, 25% growth just in doing it better.
Yeah.
Scheduling it better.
Yeah.
Much less really fixing some of the structural issues with the sport, moving the playoff closer to the regular season. You know, like when everybody cares about college football around Thanksgiving, why not start the playoffs?
I know.
I don't know.
I mean, it's been literally December has been like this real estate in college football. It's been like this big piece of land on the water in Los Angeles. Not for sale.
And they're like, NFL, do you want to just jump in and take
this?
it?
This is why I've been yelling about baseball forever. If you shorten the season to 120 games, August is wide open. Now that nobody plays starters in the preseason in the NFL, college football is idle. There's about a 4 to 5 week period in August. We're all dying for big games. Baseball could shorten their season, start the playoffs October 11th or August 11th, and be captivating before pro football gets rolling and college football.
I just really want to hang on to that Thursday night, 15 degrees in Philly, where you're playing a Game 6 for the World Series on November 8th.
Like there's real estate in college football. Over December 1 to January 5th.
I mean, the national championship should be on New Year's Day. Like, own something. Or a Saturday night at a minimum. At a minimum. By the way, you know what you could do? You could go to the NFL and you could say, hey, listen, you're playing these Saturday games. You know what we can do? Rather than just a doubleheader on Wild Card Weekend on Saturday, let's make it a triple header. 2 NFL games, and then the network that does the second NFL game, they also do the College National Championship, which is a Saturday night primetime event. Now you shove 35 million viewers or more, 40 million,
into Michigan,
directly
Washington.
Into a national championship game. That's how you take something that's kind of not what it should be, low 20s, high 20s millions in terms of the viewers, and you increase it by 15%. Like, just some forward thinking in our sport, and there's so much growth.
Think how popular college football is, and it's poorly run. It's the restaurant that does everything wrong and has a line around the block.
Yeah, it
does everything wrong, and we still love it.
It's boxing in 1991. That's what it is.
Yeah. Aram, Don King nonsense. I can't wait to watch.
Yeah, and it's like, when is Mike fighting? I'm in.
It is crazy.
Yeah.
Joel Klatt, the voice of college football. Oh,
we agreed just a lot this year.
What? Huh?
We agreed a lot this year.
Well, I am a fan of disruptive forces. And so I think you and I privately, although we didn't air it, I know it was my Huskies. I was rooting for Harbaugh all year because it was just sticking it to rigid people with agendas. I love this year.
It was a good year.
Good year.
Good year of college football. Thanks for having me on all the time, man.
Yeah, we went either way. We weren't sure if we were going to bring you back this year, but we
decided. Was it up in the air?
We liked your energy.
Well, you know what? I'll be like Saquon, and I'll take a tag next year. If you just want to tag me for next year, I'm in.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.